a new ruling in the case of a former Bardstown police officer charged in connection to Crystal Rogers' disappearance. Nick Houck is scheduled to be back in court at 9 this morning. He is charged with perjury. Prosecutors say he lied under oath when asked about the disappearance of Crystal Rogers. Houck's lawyers are asking the judge to order prosecutors to release details about what exactly they say he lied about. So far, prosecutors have only said the perjury happened between July 15th of 2015 and August 16th, 2023. That is a timeline that begins shortly after the Bardstown mother disappeared and extends to just before his brother, Brooks Houck, was indicted. Brooks Houck and Crystal Rogers were dating at the time she disappeared. We will have a crew in the courtroom this morning.
Yesterday morning, we told